All right, everyone. Good evening. We will start in about 4 minutes. All right, we will wait a little bit longer and then we will start. Okay. I can see that some people are trying to join. So 3 more minutes and then we can start. All right. So we have shared the link in all the WhatsApp groups, and yeah, in about just 2 minutes we can start. All right. So we will wait a few more seconds and then we'll kick off the session about working and dealing with the stakeholders in a project. All right. I think tonight's topic is really an important one, very important topic. Even PMI and the PMP exam, they focus a lot on managing stakeholders, their expectations, engaging stakeholders, dealing with the stakeholders. So one of the guys who took the exam today called me right after the exam and told me that most of the exam was about dealing with conflicting situations with the stakeholders. It's really such an important topic, and that's why PMI focuses a lot on this topic because stakeholders are a very critical and important part of a project, of any project. And if you don't know your stakeholders, if you don't manage them properly, then you risk having your project failing. So, all right, good. So, okay, a couple of more seconds and then we can start. All right, so it's 8 p.m. sharp now, Tunisia time, so we can start this third session in this project management in practice program. So, hello everyone. My name is Ahmed bin Hamouda. And I've started this series of, practicing project management, sharing different tools and templates, as well as techniques, just to help you guys be able to manage your projects properly, because I really would like you to succeed in your projects. A lot of people join our project management courses, mainly the PMP exam preparation course. And even though we do provide most of the templates that they need as project managers, and also we provide, case studies and some practice, but we thought it's not enough, and that's why we wanted, to add this practice program to help everyone be able to use all the different tools that they need, at least they need as basics, in order to succeed in their project. So in session one, we saw how to create a business case. We did share the recording on our YouTube channel and also the templates. In session two, we went through creating or drafting a project charter and how to kick off a project. And in today's session, we will go through identifying how would you identify your project stakeholders, who could be a stakeholder. We will be using the same case study as last week about the electric vehicles charging company, okay, and the 1,350 charging stations that they would like to install in different cities in the country. And also, we will also see some tools, how to analyze stakeholders and how to manage stakeholder engagement, how to create an engagement plan. This is really important, okay? In all these 8 sessions, these are the third one and 5 more to come. I really want to share with you guys, things from my own practice, tools that I have used, the flow of managing the project, really, so you can, at least, have the most important steps and tools in managing the project properly, all right? Okay, so let's have 5 minutes, just, of a couple of slides from our PMP course. Just for 5 minutes, we will have a couple of slides from our PMP exam preparation course, and then we will go and work with the different tools that we have prepared for you. And as usual, tomorrow we will be sharing the recording on our YouTube channel, and we will be sharing also the tools, the different tools that we will be using today, all right? So first of all, let's understand together who is a stakeholder. Now, you cannot have any project without stakeholders. Because you, as a project manager, when you start a project, your first stakeholder is your project sponsor. It's the person who assigned you as a project manager on this project. And then even in the PMBOK from PMI, identifying stakeholders happens right at the start of the project. It does not happen only at the start of the project. It can happen all the time throughout the project. But once you start the project, once you're assigned as a project manager, probably the first thing you need to do is understanding the project context. You probably need to read the business case, start drafting the charter with the sponsor, and also at the same time, you need to identify your project stakeholders. Who could qualify? Who could now the term qualify is really, really important. And why did we use this term? To prove that being a stakeholder requires qualifications. Okay, you need to who qualifies to be or who qualifies as a stakeholder for your project. So a stakeholder could be anyone who's interested in your project or who is involved in your project, and or so either, okay, who could influence. They could influence the work in the project, okay, or they could be impacted by the project deliverables, okay? So if somebody or some party who could have one of these 3 characters, then they could qualify as a stakeholder, sorry, and then you will have to record them and register them in the stakeholder register, okay? So the interest, the influence on the project work, and then the being impacted by the project deliverables. That's in a nutshell who could qualify as a stakeholder. That's very important to remember. And once you start the project, how would you identify your project stakeholders? The first thing you will need to ask the sponsor, okay? Directly ask the sponsor. That's what I used to do in my projects. I go ahead and ask the sponsor, who do you define as stakeholders? Who are the most important people or parties, okay, or entities that I need to pay attention to, identify them as stakeholders, and record them in my stakeholder register. And then I might need to check previous projects, especially similar projects. Maybe our company worked in the same, product or similar product in the past, and through that product or the lessons learned of that product, probably I could identify more stakeholders, okay? Or I could read the business case. Now, reading the business case is an important source of stakeholder identification, because in the business case, as we saw in the session one, there mentioned, different information, and one of them is who might be interested in this project, or who might influence the work on this project, or who might help us succeed in this project. So this will help me define probably more and more stakeholders. And probably the last source would be, referring back to the organizational process assets, or maybe, having some guidance from the project management office on who could be your project stakeholders. Okay, so you really need to do this. It's a simple thing, it's an easy thing. And once you have the stakeholder register template with you, and you know that you have to fill in this template, then everything else will be smooth and will come, easy in hand, right? Um, Something very important for you to remember is, when do we need to have just a sponsor on a project, and when do we need to have a steering committee or a steering board on a project? So now, if we have a small project, and when we say small, that's in terms of size, people involved, the duration, the budget, the team size, the complexity, etc. So different elements, now some people ask, the straightforward the question. So what's the small budget? You could have, a project of just, of $50,000 or $20,000. That probably would qualify as a small project with, a handful of people involved. But if you have a project like with 30 plus people, with, $500,000 or $1 million plus budget, and a lot of, people intervening from here and there, probably that's a large project. And for a large project, with, we might need a steering committee or a steering board more than just having a sponsor, because probably we need more people for steering the project, for guiding us through this project as a project manager or project team. Okay, so that's when, that's our two different types of projects. Which project do we need just a sponsor for, and which project do we need a steering committee? And a steering committee, the steering committee, we can have a bunch of people, such as the sponsor, the customer, the senior management, executives, decision makers, PMO, representatives of different departments or different divisions, etc. Okay, so all these people could be part of a steering committee in a project. Okay, so just remember this, guys. Just two more slides, and then we go to the practical side of this session, because we cannot jump right into the practice without having an introduction. And you, as a project manager, probably one of the most important skills that you need to show and perform to prove that you're really a good project manager and that you're really in control of your project is to be able to manage your stakeholder engagement. Okay, keeping your stakeholders engaged, working closely with them depending on their power and interest, etc. So you really need to have an engagement plan. Engaging your stakeholders is a process of 5 steps. So in the first step, you need to identify your project stakeholders. We talked about this, and we will move on then to the tools, how to do that. Then you need to analyze the power and interest levels of each stakeholder in order to prioritize your stakeholders, because you will not deal with the stakeholders, all of them, with the same urgency or the same importance. It's not the same as dealing with a stakeholder of a high power and high interest, and a stakeholder with a low power and low interest. It's not going to be the same. They will not have the same influence on the project. Now, the word influence is really, really important. So you will have to analyze their power and interest, or their influence on the project. Prioritize them again based on their power and interest. We'll see how that can be done. And then you will have to create an engagement plan. Now, today we will see an example of how to engage stakeholders, and also we will talk about how to keep them engaged. Now, depending on your preferences, okay, we will see the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix in practice. We will provide you with a tool so you know how to keep your stakeholders engaged, and how to move them from one position towards the project to another one that is probably more desired. Okay, we will see that. And then you keep monitoring your stakeholder engagement. And also, you don't monitor just the stakeholder engagement, but also you do monitor your stakeholders' power and interest. Stakeholders, or the power of and interest of every stakeholder could shift. It could change. It could go up or down depending on different factors. First of all, depending on your way of, let's say, managing these stakeholders engagement. If you're doing the right job, doing things in the right way, probably you could keep them engaged. But if you don't know what kind of communication style your stakeholders prefer, um, you don't know how to respond to their needs, if you don't know how to share the progress with them, then you might lose their interest, or you might get them angry. And be careful with the ones with high power, because you really don't want to get those angry, because if they get angry and if they have the power, they could turn against the project. They could become blockers, uh, or they could hinder the project, and pull it back, and don't let the project progress as it should. So you really have to be careful with that. Okay, so really dealing with the stakeholders, I call it a show, or it's the part of the project where you as a project manager could show your real skills of really taking the project to a success. Okay, that's one of the categorizations of really a good project manager. And then the last slide we will have to in this PowerPoint before we move on to the practical tools is you need to have a power interest grid. We will show you later how to measure the power, how to measure the interest. But having your power interest grid, I remember when I learned project management in 2007, maybe 2008, and my first training with my first project management instructor, one of the first tools he showed us is this power interest grid. He showed us how to use it, and he really emphasized on it. He said this is really important grid or matrix that you really need to master, and it's a basic tool, but you need to have it on your project. Now, this power and interest grid, it helps you as a project manager to understand the position, not the position, sorry, the priority of each one of your stakeholders, because if you have come to know the interest level and the power level of each one of your stakeholders, then you will know how to deal with them. The stakeholder with a high interest in the project and a high power, so this stakeholder is in a high position or in a high ranking, or maybe they just have the power, they have the authority, the power to take decisions, for example, etc. So a person with a high power and a high interest, you will need to work with them closely. You need to put a lot of effort to satisfy them, be aware of their needs, their communication preferences, keep them updated with any changes, manage them closely. You have to deal with them really almost on daily basis. Okay, so that's how you deal with stakeholders with a high power and high interest. Okay. Then come second, the stakeholders with high power, but they don't have high interest yet. Okay, they do have high power. They know that there is a project that you're managing. They're aware, but currently they're busy with other initiatives. But you don't know when will they change their interest level. So these stakeholders, you will have to keep them satisfied. You don't want to annoy them with a lot of information or excessive details, but you do need to keep them satisfied, provide them with whatever they need in terms of communication, reporting. You invite them to the meetings that they think they would like to join, etc. Okay, but you need to make sure that they're always informed about the project status and progress, but you don't want to push them away from the project. Okay, then in third position come the stakeholders who are really interested in your project. Okay, they care a lot for your project, even though they don't have high power. They have low power, but these people who are interested, they could be your peers or your colleagues or people from other departments, probably your partners. You want to keep them informed because they could function as an early warning system. They could alert you in case of any approaching risks, and maybe they could assist you in solving some of the technical issues. Okay, so those are sort of your wheels in the project, and you really need these people. All right, despite of them having a low power. And then there is this fourth type of stakeholders. Oh, they don't have that much power, they don't have that much interest, but they do qualify. You see, we go back to the same term, which is qualifying. They do qualify as stakeholders, and these you need to provide them with the minimum information, not so much detail, okay, but just probably as enough. And you keep an eye on them, because you never know when any one of them would change their level of interest or their level of power. Okay, so we wanted to start the session with these 4 slides from the PMP training or PMP course. All right, and now we want to go to some practical tools. All right, we really want to go or use with you or share with you some practical tools. We will be seeing with you, some basic tool on, or first of all, who could be a stakeholder. Then we will share with you, a combined stakeholder register with an engagement assessment matrix, an engagement plan. All right, this is really an important one. Okay, and then also how to analyze your stakeholders' interests and power. Okay, so these 3 or 4 tools that we have them in just one file. We will share it with you later in the description of the video once we upload it to YouTube. You could download it, you could use it. It would be really helpful for you to start using it. Slowly, you could adjust it. You could to adjust it to your project needs, but we do recommend that you use it in your project. Okay, so I would like you to remember that your stakeholders could be internal and could be external. Now, when we say internal stakeholders, those are stakeholders from the same company, okay, that you work for. That could be the sponsor, even though sometimes the sponsor could be also external. For example, the customer could qualify as a sponsor in some cases, okay? And some other cases, your sponsor is an internal person, usually a head of department or head of division, who's adopted the project under their umbrella, and now they chose you to manage as a project manager. So internals, when we talk about stakeholders, you always have to think straight about internal and external stakeholders. And in most projects, internal stakeholders could be the sponsor, or members of the steering committee or the steering board, members of the change control board, if it does exist, especially in projects managed with waterfall approach. Who could be from the other departments, or who could qualify from the other departments as stakeholders. So people, I just call them people from other departments. They could be managers from other departments, they could be peers, etc. So when we talk about internal stakeholders, you really need to pay attention to them. And when we say etc., we could also mean, for example, people from the PMO office, or maybe people representing the interests of the company, etc. Okay, so company representatives. So let me just add those. All right. So representatives, yeah. So those usually people from other departments, PMO, probably sometimes they could be internal stakeholders or company representatives, etc. And then depending really, people from other departments or maybe other divisions, or maybe even other specialities. Okay, they could be people from ops, operations, production, other departments, etc. Okay, so the sponsor will help you know who could qualify as stakeholders from those other departments, or you could simply also ask some of your stakeholders if they know other people who might qualify as stakeholders. Now that's for internal stakeholders. For external stakeholders, it's usually the customer or the end users. Okay, those are the first stakeholders to identify. Maybe for some projects, government representatives, or we call them regulatory body. Okay, sometimes partners in case you're partnering with partnering, yeah, with other companies on this project, maybe vendors, suppliers, contractors, etc. Okay. Now, the easiest stakeholders to identify usually are those internal ones, but the most difficult stakeholders to identify usually are the external stakeholders, because sometimes we forget about any regulatory body or any partners. Sometimes we forget about some suppliers, some contractors. So you as a project manager, when you're identifying your stakeholders, uh, make sure that you review your stakeholder list with the sponsor, with the subject matter experts, with your team, etc. So you won't forget anyone. And as we saw last week, when you draft the project charter, then you will need to include the most important stakeholders with the highest influence in that charter. So then they can sign and the charter and commit to the project. So that's just to help you, have an initial idea on who could be your stakeholders. So when we will provide you with this template, and whenever you open it and you're starting a new project, have a look at it and think. Are there any people from other departments or divisions or specialties that I need to identify stakeholders? Anyone from management or from executive level, etc. Anyone's from the steering committee or the change control board, etc. And then when it comes to external stakeholders, do we have any partners? Are there any contractors, any regulatory body, etc.? So you need to ask yourself these questions. That's just to guide you and help you, right? And of course, make sure that you ask your sponsor or your steering committee members, and they might help you with identifying relevant stakeholders. Now we move on to one of the most important tools in stakeholder management, okay, which is the stakeholder register. Now here we try to give you a combined stakeholder register with an engagement assessment matrix to make it really easier for you to follow closely with your stakeholders. Now, we will use the same example project from last week, which is the EV stations installations. You probably remember the project about implementing 1,350 electric vehicles charging stations in different cities in the country in order to reduce fossil fuel emissions as set by the law and have a positive impact on the environment. This project will help our company's mission of being world's largest EV charging provider and also reduce the environmental impact of fossil fuel cars through our services. Now, Bernard Law is the project manager. The project is set to start on the 12th of March 2022 and with an expected end date of the 6th of March 2024. So about 2 years, okay, because it's really such a huge and large project. And of course, all the data shown here is just an example. And, we need just, to be, quick. We didn't want to, have a full project stakeholder. But now, first of all, our first stakeholder, if we would like to follow this list, then our first stakeholder is John Carter. He is the CEO of the company. This is his email address. Probably we could add also his telephone number. And here, we need to measure or calculate the interest and power levels of each stakeholder that we put on in this stakeholder register. Now, how would you measure the interest and power of each stakeholder? Now, you could do it your way, okay, in any way you think. You could ask them directly, or you could do it through observations. Here, we try to, give you some tool, right? Some tool that might help you measure the power and interest level of each stakeholder. So for analyzing the interest level, measuring the interest level of the stakeholder, we've created for you a 4 sample questions that you could ask to each stakeholder, or you could answer them yourself, okay? And each question, so one question, so let me put here one question or one yes, let's call it like this. One yes equals 25%. Okay, let's put it this way, and I will explain it. In a while. All right. So now, in order to know how interested each stakeholder is in the project, so we could ask them 4 questions, for example. Now, question 1, and this is just a sample question, you could change it, however it fits you or fits the project needs. Would you like to join the weekly risk management meeting? Now, if they say yes, they get 25%. Now, let's put it here. Okay, probably it's let's put it here. So yes is like 25%, for example. Okay, 25%, just is our choice. You could, put different percentage in there, right? So if they say yes, they get 25%. If they say no, they get 0%. So no is a 0%. Okay. Would you escalate if the project is not progressing well? If they say yes, they get 25%. No, they get 0%. Would you like to participate in taking decisions? Okay. If they say yes, they get 25%. If they say no, they get 0%. Do you work in any other initiatives that are dependent on this project? Now, we ask this question because, a lot of different executives and managers, usually they are involved in different initiatives, different projects. So if their other initiatives or their other projects are dependent on this project, that means they're really, really interested, or they could be really interested in this project. So that's why we added this question, all right? So, and if they say yes, they get 25%, and if they say no, they get 0%. Now, to put a scale, right? Let's put it here just to help you guys. So from 0 to 50%, that's, sorry, let's put it like this. That's low, okay? And where's that? Sorry, just a second. Okay. And from 51 to 100, that's probably a high interest and high power, all right? So yeah, let's put it like this. And and then we will calculate and see for each stakeholder how much interest they got and how much power they have. Okay, and the same thing for power. All right, we have prepared for you a set of 4 questions. You can change the question however you want. Question 1: do you require to sign on any official project documentations, such as the project charter, the closure report, or the delivery report, etc.? If they say yes, they get 25%. If they say no, they get 0%. Do you require to approve any changes in regards to the scope, budget, or schedule? Yes, 25%. No, 0%. Do you have a veto right in any part or aspect of the project? That's a very, very important question, really. I mean, all these questions are really important. If they say yes, they get 25%. If they say no, they get 0%. And is the project work dependent on your delivery? It means we cannot, proceed with the project work without your delivery. That means you really have really huge power, because they could influence the work in our project. If they say yes, they get 25%. If they say no, they get 0%. Okay. And then again, from 0 to 50, that's low. From 51 to 100, that's high. Now here, we go back to our stakeholder register. And for example, for John Carter, the CEO, we've asked them the questions, or we asked them the questions, or probably we have answered the questions ourselves, because sometimes, it's not right, or it's not good to ask these questions to certain stakeholders. It's not a problem to ask these questions to the CEO, okay, or maybe the sponsor, all right? But sometimes for certain stakeholders, such as the customer or some partners, you need to, conclude it yourself, okay? Figure it out yourself without asking them the questions directly, or maybe you could figure out a way how to ask them the questions, okay? Now, for John Carter, their interest is high, their power is high. Again, this is just an example. And here in the stakeholder register, it's really, really important to to understand and know their expectations. What do they want, from this project? For example, the CEO wants the project to run on budget, and they want to have less than 1% defect in the charging stations. So that means from 1,350 charging stations, the John could permit no more than 14 stations with certain defects to fix. Okay. So those are their expectation, his expectations. What kind of information do they need? They need status updates, and they need that weekly. You see here, the frequency is weekly. And how do they want to have that? Or how does he want to have that? Is through a phone call. All right. So John, as a CEO, told you, hey, Bernard Law, call me weekly and give me a status update. Is John a decision maker? Definitely yes. All right. So here you could pick between yes or no. Here, of course, you could pick between low, medium, and high. Okay, you're supposed to have just low and high. You can adjust this template however you want. Okay. And before we move on to the engagement assessment, let's continue. Now we have Ali Sharif, he's a CFO. That's his contact email address. Their interest, again, the same way: high interest, high power. Their expectations is not requesting any additional funding. He's a CFO. He doesn't like to spend more money on this project. And what kind of information update do they need? Does he need? He would like to have a status update, budget reports, of course, definitely he's a CFO, timeline update, and in case of any changes, he would like to be aware and informed. Is Ali Sharif a decision maker? Definitely yes. Frequency of the update. He asked for a bi-weekly update. So sorry, no, actually the other way around. Twice a week, actually. All right, so weekly, twice a week. He would like to have that twice a week, and through a phone call, for example. That's just an example, guys. Okay, they could ask for this through email, but usually CFO, CEO, they don't read their emails that much, or actually they have sort of prioritization or filtering mechanism. So to make sure that they get your updates, you just call them. Okay. Christina Wolf is our director of the engineering department. That's a very important department. We need a lot of engineering in this project. That's her contact. Her interest is medium because she's got a lot of other projects going on. Her power is medium, even though she's a director. What does she need? All tests to be complete, full documentation. So, for example, those are her requirements and expectations for this project. What kind of information update does she need? Anything that concerns the timeline, because she doesn't want that to clash with any other with the planning of any other projects, and key decision or key design decisions. Okay, because she's from engineering. All right. Is she decision maker? For example, no. Frequency of the update weekly, and she would like to have a Teams meeting. All right. Matt Dunn, for example, is a city council, because we talked about installing the charging stations in different cities. For example, this is just an example. Low interest with a high power, because he's from a city council, but now he's really not so much interested, because Matt is probably interested in more in other initiatives. All what he cares about is having all the paperwork complete and done, and making sure that we do not install any charging stations in any location without the proper documentation in place. The kind of information update he asks for is, again, anything regarding the timeline, so then he could report that to his bosses. Any key construction decisions, because he's from the city. Is he decision maker? Definitely yes. Frequency of the update weekly, and again a Teams meeting. Sarah Smith, for example, she is the representative of all the malls where we'll be installing the charging stations, because we will install them in the malls and the service stations or the gas stations. Low interest and low power. Why low? Because actually, for her, this is just again another born that will be added to the mall. She's not really that interested. All she cares about is an on-time go live. We just need to tell her when we will go live in each mall, and stick to that timeline. What kind of information update? She just needs a status update. She's not a decision maker. Just a monthly status update because there are hundreds of malls in the list, and just send her an email. All right, that's just an example, etc., etc. That we could identify more stakeholders. But you, as a project manager, you really need to have the stakeholder register. You need to have it, and you need to keep it updated. You need to use it daily in your project. Okay, you really need that. Remember, don't forget this. You cannot be a true project manager. You cannot have a proper project without having the stakeholder register. Now, you are the right one as a project manager to define the engagement level that you need from each of your stakeholders. All right. Now, how much would you like to have your stakeholders engaged? Now, in this engagement assessment matrix, we have 5 different situations in which the stakeholders could be, or each one of the stakeholders could be. You could have an unaware stakeholder, so they are not aware at all, or stakeholder that is against, or that is neutral, not against, not supportive, not resistant, or a supportive stakeholder, or a leading stakeholder. Okay. Now, the letter C indicates currently what is their position towards the project, and D is the desired. Okay, where do you desire the stakeholder to be? So, for example, again, this is just an example, guys. We tried, to play with the data here, or fake the data, and then you could use it for real in your project. For example, John Carter is the CEO. Currently, when we are assessing their engagement level in the project, they are supportive. And that's where we want them to be. So C, okay, as we will see here, the engagement plan, we will come to that in a while. So C is current, or currently where they are, and D is the desired, all right? And we will talk about this in a while when we will present you this engagement plan, how to engage your stakeholders. So John Carter currently is supportive, and we would like him to be supportive. So what you need to do as a project manager, keep doing whatever you're doing. Don't do much or more, don't do more, don't do less, okay? Uh, they're fine with whatever you're doing. If you give them the weekly update they need, and you agree with them on a specific day and a specific time for the update. So he could block it in his calendar. And if you call him, all right, and you give him exactly the status update, and you're doing good, you're on budget, you don't have more than 1% of defective charging stations, you're fine. You're fine, and they will keep being supportive for the project. For Ali Sharif, the CFO, currently he's neutral. He provided you with the budget, he gave you all the money you need, and that's it. He's got a lot of different initiatives and projects to oversee. So actually, he's not paying that much attention to your project. But you need him to be supportive. Why is that? Because he's an important decision maker. He's got high power. This project is huge, it's complex. There could be any changes at any moment regarding the cost, the budget. So you really need him to be supportive. Now, what you need to do later on, we will discuss this, how to get him from being neutral to supportive. That's what we will see in the next plan, in which we will in the next engagement plan exactly, and we will take different examples, and that's an important one. Christina Wolf, currently she's supportive. We would like her to be more of leading, because actually this project falls directly under her department and her supervision. So you need to work hard on making Christina change position from being supportive only to being to leading. For example, here Matt Dunn, he's against the project. He's from the city council. He doesn't like it. He's friends with the gas stations. He's a fan of the old petrol stations. So that's why he's against the project. And you want him to be supportive. So here with Matt, you will need to work on a plan yourself. As a project manager, you might need some support from the sponsor. in order to convince Matt of this project, even though he probably signed on the charter. He's just, he's from one city council. On the project we have maybe 13 cities, so he's from one city council. We did not want to mention the name of the city, but he's from one city council. Probably his governor, or maybe even the minister of the energy in the country oblige him to accept the project, but he's not really in favor. So you need to make sure that you create a plan how to move Matt from a resisting position to a supportive position. Okay, and that will require a lot of work because Matt is not an internal stakeholder. Matt is an external stakeholder. Okay, so he's first of all external. He's from a city council. He's got power. All right, and he's against your project. Now you've got three situations, the three characteristics of Matt that you need to solve one by one. All right, and we will see in a while how would you do that. And for example, Sarah, the representative of the malls, is just an example. Okay, guys, she's unaware currently of the project. So first of all, you want to get her to become aware of the project, and also you want her to be supportive of the project. So usually, as project managers, you don't want that many stakeholders who are resistant to the project. You might want most of the stakeholders to be supportive. So that's why, the work of the project manager with the stakeholders is not really that easy. You really need to work hard with the different stakeholders, depending on, really their expectations, their positions, their background, their connections. You see, I will tell you a story, guys. Once I worked on a huge, huge project. It was between two giant companies. I was, representing IBM. My client was a Swedish company called ABB. And in that project, it was a huge program actually. It was not a project, it was a huge program with many projects within, and hundreds of people involved from both sides. And it was a lot of, diplomatic discussions, a lot of tension, and as a project manager or program manager, I really needed to deal with all those people, with their hidden agendas from both sides, okay? And their different expectations, interests, etc. So really, as a project manager, it was like sorry, I said diplomatic. No, I meant a lot of political discussions. A lot of political discussions, because the contract was huge. We were talking about tens and tens, probably hundreds, maybe tens of millions of dollars, euros actually, and a lot of political discussions. Each side blames the other side, from any delays, any changes, etc. So that was really one of the most interesting projects I ever worked on. It was for about 2.5 years. I learned a lot from it, and the most challenging part for me in that project was managing the stakeholders. Now, if we move on to the engagement plan, now you need to create your engagement plan, all right? The same project, the same example, but just different people. Now, here you list your stakeholder, all right? In the stakeholder register, you have their position towards the project. So here you will list your stakeholder. What is their area of interest? For example, the city residents, they're interested in safety and accessibility, okay? Here, we're having a different type of stakeholders on purpose, in which project phases are they supposed to be involved? Now, that's a very important part and piece of information in this stakeholder engagement plan. In which phase of the project are they supposed to be involved? Now, the city residents, they're supposed to be involved in the planning, in the execution, and the closure. Okay, again, that's just an example, guys. Okay, what is my engagement approach? How am I going to engage them? All right. So I'm going to include them. So it's going to be inclusive. Okay. I will keep asking them for their input and feedback because the residents, they like to be involved. They like to share their opinions. So I figured that by asking them for their input and feedback, I will keep them involved, especially in the planning phase, and the execution phase, and the closing phase. Okay. How am I going to engage them? For example, through sharing updates on the social media. Now we've created a page for our project. And by the way, guys, since 2013, I guess, in almost in every company I worked, whenever we worked on a huge project or a public project, for that project, we created a dedicated page on the different social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we were sharing updates on those social media platforms to the public. Okay, again, especially if the project is with the public, like as in this project. Okay, so we kept them updated. We didn't want to send them those usual newsletters or reports through emails. No, actually, we did it in a more fashionable way and more engaging way, because on the social media platforms they could react, they could share their opinions, ask questions, leave comments, they could share our update, etc. So we figured that that would be the best and ideal way on how to share, or of how to share updates with the city residents. Okay, and we were doing that weekly. All right. So now this engagement plan, you could add more sections. We just want to keep it narrow, but you could add more sections, because really this is your plan on how to have each stakeholder in the desired position you want them to be in towards the project. Okay, so for example, the city residents, if currently they're unaware and we want them to be supportive of our project, so that's our plan. That's our plan, how we will execute it in order, to have them supported. For example, the environmental groups, they are so interested in the green space preservation and and the sustainable design. We need them in the initiation, the planning. And when we say we need them, that means where do we need their support? So we need their support in the initiation and in the planning. Okay. After that, it's fine. We can run it on our own. So they will have a consultative role because they would like to give, to be consulted with. Okay. So that's my engagement approach, is going to be consultative. Okay. I'm going to seek their expertise in regarding where to install the charging stations. Okay. How to engage them, we will do it through emails. I have chosen email because that's what my analysis gave me, probably also with what my experts advised me, and I'm going to do it monthly. Again, I repeat, that's just an example, okay, guys. All right, you don't need to probably agree with this data. Again, it's just an example data. All right, it's just a sample. All right. All right. And then we have the Department of Green Energy from the City Council. They're interested in maintenance, in operation and compliance. And for this project, we need them to be engaged with us in the initiation and the planning and in the execution. So what is my engagement approach with them? Have them as partners. So it's going to be partnership oriented, and we will work to ensure the electric vehicles long-term viability. All right. How are we going to engage them? Again, that's just an example, through phone calls or maybe online meetings, and we're going to do it bi-weekly. Okay, during the initiation, the planning, and the execution phases. Okay, and that's it. After execution, it's fine. They don't need to be engaged anymore. And then we will have the construction contractors. Usually, the construction contractors, we know that they are mostly interested in the budget and quality assurance. We need them to be engaged, okay, in the planning, in the execution, and also we need their engagement in the closure, okay, because they need to sign off on certain papers, so we could, have the official closeout of the project, and we're going to do it in a collaborative manner with them. Again, so you see, guys, I try to give you different approaches on how to engage. All right. So we're going to do it in a collaborative manner with the construction contractors. We're going to work closely to ensure a successful execution. Right. How are we going to engage them? The engagement method, we're going to do it in person through meetings, and they're going to be weekly. All right. So this is an example of your engagement plan. All right. You need to build an engagement plan. You need to have a stakeholders register. You need to keep your stakeholders register updated weekly. Now, it does not mean that
you will have new stakeholders every week. All right, that's not what we mean. But we mean you need to ensure that you check their expectations or their needs, if they have changed their communication requirements, if their level of power or interest has changed. All right, and all of that will impact your engagement plan, how you're going to engage with them, what is your plan. So these are just templates with samples. All right, we've created them for you. Also, you can find them online. It's easy. If you Google, you can find plenty of templates and samples. We've picked these ones, even though in our PMP training and in our project management training, we use different templates, but we thought to use these public ones because actually they're fine to start with. So once we share with you guys all these templates, right here, this tab will help you figure out always who to think of when you're trying to identify your project stakeholders, who might qualify as a stakeholder. This is your stakeholder register. You really need to keep it updated. You know, whenever you have a new update, or at least you have a look at it once a week, at least. Never forget it. Don't create it just at the beginning of the project and then you just forget about it. And never touch it again for months and months and months. Please don't do that. That was really a main problem for the project managers. We have coached or trained here, and here you will create your engagement plan. As we have explained, I think it's a decent one that you can start with, and then you can enhance it however you want. And here your list of questions, you can change those questions, you can change the percentage, you can modify these tools and templates however you want. Here we try to give you some sort of indication, okay, just to help you guys have a starting point, and then from there you can take it yourself. And stakeholders management is really an important part of the project. Again, I repeat, that's why in the PMP exam there are tens and tens of questions in the PMP exam about dealing with the stakeholders, so resolving conflicting situations, especially when it comes to stakeholder refusing to sign off on a delivery, or claiming that there is no compliance, or that the acceptance criteria was not met, or the business objectives were not achieved, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so those are all situations in the PMP exam, and you guys know that the PMP certification is one of the most important certifications in the world, not just in project management. And again, and the last slide I wanted to share with you guys is measuring the satisfaction of your stakeholders. Now, this is just a mood chart that we really use, in our projects. Usually in our project, every month we send a survey to our project stakeholders. The survey has got 3 to 5 questions, and that survey will measure automatically the satisfaction level of each stakeholder with the current progress of the project. You need to measure that in your project. You need to understand and know the satisfaction of your project stakeholders. Now, you're free to use whatever tool you want for measuring the satisfaction. There are plenty of tools out there. We did not want to, pick any of the tools. You could create a survey yourself, and then you keep up with your stakeholders in terms of satisfaction. And whenever you have dissatisfied stakeholders, you need to understand the root cause of their dissatisfaction, and then try to check what you can do. Again, what you can do, according to what you have in scope, in budget and in schedule, because sometimes some stakeholders ask for or have certain requirements that are outside of the scope, or they could exhaust the project budget or exceed the timelines, and this will result in a conflicting situation. And here you will need to use your conflict resolution techniques. Maybe you will need to involve your sponsor if the situation is out of your power or authority. But again, really measuring the satisfaction of your stakeholders is something that could help you understand, because if you have a dissatisfied stakeholder, and if they remain dissatisfied for a long period, then they could simply lose interest in your project, or simply they could change position from a supportive position to probably a resistant position, all right? And you don't want that, especially from stakeholders with high power. You don't want them to change positions. So that's why measuring your stakeholder satisfaction is really, really, really important, guys. Okay, you need to work on that. Now, that's one of the also KPIs that you could report on as a project manager, right? So I hope that we've helped you understand how to, identify your project stakeholders, how to analyze their power and interest, and prioritize them. Also, we in this session we saw how to create your project or your stakeholder register, identify the position of each stakeholder, and create an engagement plan. So these are really basic tools you need to use, guys, in your projects. Practice them. Start with a small project, and slowly, once you master these tools, you can use them on more complex projects. Really, they help me a lot in my work as a project manager. Project management is really fun. It's something you can enjoy. It's one of those roles that we can never get rid of. Okay, even with the introduction of AI, and even PMI itself is introducing a lot of artificial intelligence in the life of the project managers, in order to ease things, smoothen things, automate things. But that comes to probably reporting, data analysis, recording meeting minutes. But there are many things that artificial intelligence cannot do yet. And project managers are always in need. Whenever there is a change, there is a project, whenever there is an initiative, etc. And with these different sessions in this practice program, we want to help you succeed as project managers. So please remember that following whatever we have shared with you in these sessions will really help you succeed. So I hope that you have benefited from these sessions so far, guys. Next week we will work with MS Project to create a timeline. So until then, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session. We will be sharing the recording tomorrow. We will be sharing these tools in the description of the recording on our YouTube channel. And see you next Monday on a new session. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and have a great rest of the evening.